Welcome back. The South Indian is back, and life is like that. In Hindi there's a saying, kahin dhoop to kahin chhao. Sometimes it's day, sometimes it's night. In what context I'm speaking about? The India bloc is right now even concluding a meeting, of course deciding about the election strategy, seat sharing. The BJP will also do it, but before that the BJP is going to celebrate a big victory. The leaders and party workers have gathered at the party headquarters in New Delhi to celebrate the conduct of the G20 Summit. Look at those visuals right now. Latest visuals of the celebratory mood of the BJP at their headquarters. Prime Minister Modi, of course, shall be felicitated at the meeting. To give you a bit of a backgrounder, the G20 Summit was conducted in New Delhi on the 9th and 10th of September, of course under India's presidency. In what's being termed a major diplomatic victory, the Delhi Declaration was adopted with 100% consensus from all the participating nations. Another major highlight of the summit was the admission of the African Union as a permanent member of the grouping. This is being seen as a big win for the global South, and India has emerged as a voice of the disadvantaged. India was also able to form alliances which could help solve the major challenges that the world faces today. On trade and connectivity front, the India, Europe and Middle East corridor is being seen as a game changer. It is also a counter to the Belt and Road Initiative, which is of course led by China. Those are the latest visuals on your screen right now. The Prime Minister will arrive shortly and shall celebrate with the Karyakartas of his party, the BJP, the success of the G20 Summit, which was truly a success and a fantastic global initiative by India. Now, on the issue of climate change and energy transition, the Global Biofuels Alliance has been stitched up now. The alliance is to work to promote the use of sustainable energy sources. And to speak more on what the success of G20 actually means, and let's expand, as it were, the conversation. I have with me Mr. Sharad Trivedi, who is a spokesperson for the BJP. In the studio, my colleague Verghese continues to be with us, and we shall also be joined by yet another guest in a bit. I'll go to Sharadji. Namaskar. Good to have you on. Namaskar. Good to have you. Good evening, sir. Good to have you on my show. It's called the South Indian. So we are going to take a look. But there are some topics which are pan-Indian. It doesn't have to do with regions at all. I'll come to you in just 30 seconds, sir. Thank you for your patience. Verghese, don't you think the G20 success, as it were, is going to be an election issue for the BJP, because the CC meeting is going to happen? I think 2024, this is going to be one of the successes for the Bharatiya Janata Party.
Well, this is invariably a success when it comes to India's geopolitical agenda. It reflected India's geopolitical policies vis-a-vis countries, and also, it's been a far cry from what India's foreign policy had been during the Cold War era. It has shown a significant transition. We were in fact in different camps, and now we are having Western leaders at our doorsteps, in fact, and interestingly enough, we are also leveraging the size of our economy on the world stage in manners that tend to benefit us. So at the end of the day, when the G20 summit happened, the significant outcomes that came out from that particular meet was much, much higher from what you had in the other G20 meets. And the best part of it, that the impasse that happened in Bali was broken in New Delhi.
Absolutely.
The intense backroom negotiations that carried out is in fact the success of this meet.
Fantastic. Sharad Trivedi ji, I want to come to you and I want to ask, although the G20 is really not within quotes strictly political, but the thing is that it did assume some political colors and more geopolitical colors because of the Russian and the Ukrainian war. But the way it was managed, I think that was the biggest victory, because like Verghese, my colleague, said, in Bali, the word was very clearly, they said Russia is an aggressor. But the way it was handled, it was nuanced, the language, they did of course refer to the Ukrainian war, but there was no taking sides of it. Please take our viewers through what really happened, when you were trying to kind of have that Delhi declaration, which of course had complete consensus and a great success that it was.
Sudha, thank you very much to be on the for getting me on the show. I would say that this is a very rare event in international relations that a country is recognized as the voice. It has been, this is the first case in which the country has been recognized as having been arrived on the international scene. We are now the voice of the global south. The second thing is that in case of Russia and Ukraine conflict, earlier it was called the war against Ukraine. This time, as you said, that it has been nuanced as war in Ukraine.
Yes.
And the issues concerning the China and Russia, both of these countries have been addressed. The second thing is that we have the world has accepted the reform of the United Nations Security Council. The third is the African Union, on the request of India, has been accepted as a member of G20. We have also agreed on the fact that the renewable energy sources have to be tripled by 2025, and the debt relief for vulnerable countries has to be taken on an urgent basis. And this is also the first case in which one man, it was a one-man show. It was Modi ji all through. He was the conductor, he was the producer, he was everything. He was on that stage all through. So this is the first time that India has been recognized. The country has been recognized, and the entire world came to one consensus. There was no dissent at all. In international relations and international meetings, there is dissent. It is a normal thing. But this time, with 200 meetings and in 4 hours, we brought the consensus, and even the opposition is accepted. And Mr. Shashi Tharoor has also commended the act of Mr. Jaishankar, the Prime Minister, and the rest of the officers who were involved in building of this consensus. It is a victory for the country.
I was, Mr. Trivedi, I was talking to Manishankar Iyer the other day, and he also concedes that more than anyone else, foreign policy is of course orchestrated by Mr. Narendra Modi. I mean, Manishankar can be cynical most often, but even he had to concede that in it. Suresh Kochetil has also joined us. I'll go to him in a bit. Welcome, Suresh. But Mr. Trivedi, let me also, when you said at the center of it was of course Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Ladies and gentlemen, we're waiting for the Prime Minister to come address his karyakartas in a bit, and we are just warming up so that once he starts speaking, then of course we shall cut live. Mr. Trivedi, what it is also what it did was it scuttled the unfavorable comparison with the China dominated BRICS. Would you agree, or would you comment on that?
Yes, the dominance of China, the dragon has almost faded into the background. China, as it is, has got a lot of economic troubles up its sleeve. But the overall China and Russia both have been relegated into the background. India is on the world stage, and this has been recognized by almost all the G7 countries. It has been recognized, the BRICS countries, and even Russia has commented that this is the first time the consensus has been achieved on something which concerned them most, that was the Ukraine crisis. So it has been a victory all through. We cannot say that it was a defeat for anybody. It was a victory all through. Every country went back with something that they really wanted to come back with.
Right. We were talking before you joined us, we were talking about how the entire Ukraine-Russia, aggression that we have been witnessing was very nuanced. The language was kind of watered down. I mean, it was not that it was omitted, but it was called, the war in Ukraine, to be very, very precise, rather than anything else. Suresh, I want to ask you that, it is also a victory because, just a minute, Suresh, let's hear this. All right, that's Jai Shri Ram which is happening so anyway, so Suresh, you're also smiling, I like that. And I want to ask you that the Western Bloc, instead of actually wanting to, I'm not saying that they were conspiring to, but instead of wanting for this G20 to break down, as it were, after all, US is also wooing us in a major way to contain China in more ways than one. But the point is that, their acceptance of also how we kind of project the Ukraine thing is also a major victory for India at G20. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think you mentioned about the foreign policy and the
Yeah.
proactiveness of Dr. Jaishankar. I think all of us agree that over the last 9 years, 8 years to be precise, Mr. Jaishankar came in slightly late. The foreign policy has been on a very, very strong footing. I mean, Sushma Swaraj left off and, Jaishankar ji took over. And that is where the
Yes.
entire thing worked out. India is now deciding what to do, where to do, and at its own bidding. When we were told not to buy oil from Russia, we ticked off those media people and said, look, it is we who decide what's good for our country. When was the last time that you saw India saying this? This is very, very important. Because then the world comes to know that you're a superpower, that you are a superpower in real sense of the word. I mean, to look at the entire issue, you should actually work. I mean, I've been watching the Pakistani news channels over the last 1 week to gauge their reactions to the G20 summit. And there is a huge bashing going on about why Pakistan was not invited, why MBS did not stop over in Pakistan on the way back to Saudi Arabia, why did he extend his stay by a day in India? I mean, these are very, very important, what you call picture moments. These are photo opportunities, which actually with a huge Rashtrapati name in the background, you have that picture, Rashtrapati Bhavan, you have those pictures which speak 1,000 words. India today, I mean, thanks to whatever it is, its scientific powers, it kind of financial muscle that it holds today, is able to talk to people. And the language with which Prime Minister Modi was receiving each and every of the world leaders at the stage in the Bharat Mandapa spoke a lot. It is not that the leaders just walked in straight away. They had to walk quite a distance, actually. And by the time they reached there, they knew that, that is the way to come. And if holding it all together, as you said, negotiating, that is a very important fact. UN has today become a debating society with toothless, actually, if you ask me. There is no power in the UN, because you can veto anything that you want if you are one of those fives. And that is where this particular G21, now we can't call it 20, G21 makes a lot of sense.
Right.
And we are seeing the Quad come up, we are seeing the BRICS come up. There are different aspects in which everywhere India is involved. ASEAN, India is there. Quad, India is there. BRICS, India is there. And G21, of course, now that India is handing over the mantle to Brazil, but still India is there. And that is very, very important. I mean, when we look at the previous one, I'm not decrying Dr. Manmohan Singh. He was a prime minister in every respect. We need to respect that position of whatever he was holding. But remember that he was not able to deliver that kind of body language that was required. Prime Minister Modi picking up the flag from the ground while they were posing for the group photograph, and other heads of state following suit. That was a moment. India today is able to talk on its own terms because we are no longer dependent. There was a
Absolutely.
time
there is no gainsaying the fact that, G20 has been a fabulous success and, done to last to the perfection. And that is, many experts say, is how the Prime Minister works. He wants perfection from every step to every step, and I think that takes something. Verghese, he is also going to be having dinner with the police officials today, because guess what? This is what I've heard, that the police were practicing and rehearsing for this G20 thing almost a year and a half ago.
Well, this was supposed to be the flagship program, and therefore as you were pointing out, we did come across a story as well where the Prime Minister did give out a protocol kind of training session for his ministers on how to receive the guests, how to speak to them. So when it comes to perfection, he had in fact looked at the entire meet from a 360-degree angle. So in that way, yes, he was actually completely informed about it. And the Delhi police, which was in fact given that big responsibility, also functioned the way they have done a splendid job. There's another aspect about this G20 as well, so that most of these G20 or G7 meets, you'd see climate activists or activists who are having some kind of an issue with some of the member countries
and
coming out and protest.
Yes.
You didn't have that. This was made into a festival. This was made into a festival in the national capital region, and you had people in fact welcoming them. They said that they are guests, we have to take good care of them. beautification of Delhi also happened simultaneously
Absolutely.
at the point. So it was a different atmosphere under which G20 was held in New Delhi.
Yeah, and that Nataraja, I mean, on
Bharat
Mandapam,
Mandapam.
I think, you know, as considering that we are the South Indians, I mean, that was so beautiful, and I thought it represents, I mean, of course, that's another conversation, several things. Mr. Trivedi, I want to ask you that, do you think that apart from the Delhi Declaration, and like we just discussed with you about the kind of consensus that was, you know, achieved at the G20, the other is would you say the second most important thing is the economic corridor, you know, linking the EU and the Middle East and India physically, and which of course President Biden called it a really big deal, you know, like a good American. So talk a bit about that, and you know, so that the viewers know that yes, this is the second, would you agree that this is the second most important thing that was achieved, Mr. Trivedi?
Well, I couldn't have said it better. It was the most important thing that was achieved in this meeting. And as per the estimates, probably about 40% reduction in the freight charges would be there from the movement from Delhi to anywhere in Europe. So that is a big change. That is going to, we are going to almost undercut the Suez Canal. We are going to undercut the Chinese, the Belt and Road Initiative. This is going to be a remarkable achievement in probably the history of mankind.
Yeah, but then I want to ask you, sir, that there is no timeline. That there is no timeline which has been provided, no, you know, details about where the funds will come from, or you think that is erroneous and you do have answers to that?
No, this is it's a proposal which has been approved by almost all the nations, and especially the ones who are going to be involved in it. Now, how the funding is going to happen, how the construction is going to take place, because along with the rail line, there would be a road network also just on the side of that railway line. So how it is going to be, that process is going to start. We just have made a statement that it has to be done. How it is going to be done is going to take time. It is going to take estimates. It is going to take the government resolutions, how they are going to achieve it, because the corridor goes up all the way up to London. So this is a very preliminary stage. The G20 was not like a decision-making body, or like they had to decide on the financing, on the technical aspect of it. From India to transporting to Saudi Arabia is pretty straightforward. Just put it on the ship and go there. But from Saudi Arabia onwards, that is going to involve a lot of countries. It is going to involve a lot of determination on the part of these countries, and the funding also.
Suresh, you know, I want to ask you another nuanced question, if you would allow me to. You know, this entire economic corridor, which is now being, of course, you know, celebrated and touted as something which is a counter to the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative. I just want to ask you that, do you think Joe Biden's, it's such a big deal, and, you know, thumping on the back and saying, rah, rah, go for it. It's also because somewhere I think the US wants to repair its relationship with Saudi Arabia.
Well, I mean, Saudi Arabia to a large extent, I mean, I think they're the second largest exporter of arms from the US. I think India is somewhere in the third or fourth range. And you'll wonder why a small country like Saudi Arabia, who needs this kind of arms and ammunition, they need to keep the US factories running. They need to keep the US employment in the defense sector at a high, keep the US happy. That is there with all the Gulf countries, be it UAE, be it except for Qatar, maybe rest of them all kind of depend on the United States. But I think the point which you made in about this particular strategic link that is being built up, it is not just a road initiative like what we had, what China proposed with its project. It is a link with the sea. It involves a bit of rail, and maybe at the end of it, it involves other unconventional means of reaching the products. Remember, India is a huge, huge market. And what's effectively happening is for the Europe to move its products to India and India to move its products to Europe via all these countries makes a lot of sense. As was mentioned by the earlier speaker, 40% cutoff in the freight charges, it's huge. And if you can get your products across to these countries, we are actually having a borderless world. I mean, that is exactly what, you know, you cut down we had GATT at one time, which was a big thing, but nobody today talks of GATT. But those GATT and other stuff go out of the window when we have a common economic corridor where products can be kind of dropped off and picked up and then moved on. And that, I think, makes a lot of sense, because Europe today is actually on a sick bed. I mean, look at Germany, look at France, everywhere. I mean, even UK for that matter. Their kind of GDP is dropping, their inflation is high. and their costs are very, very high. This is where China succeeded in the initial days when it moved a huge part of the US manufacturing to itself.
Yeah.
And that is what India is seeking to do. And we have the first of the iPhones being delivered from the Indian market into the Indian audience, and that is making a huge difference.
Yes.
Now move the products from India, and India is a huge market for Europeans to tap into the Indian market at a reasonable cost. India will not buy fancy stuff. That is for very sure. Even the guy who comes in a Mercedes will bargain with a vegetable vendor. That is for sure. So that is how India is actually. And that is where the entire thing, the corridor works out. And as you rightly said, yes, US wants to checkmate China, and what better way than use all the countries along this route, bring them on the same board. Okay, the funding part can be arrived at. It is not a kind of huge thing to be done.
Right.
It can be pooled in from different sources. And I think especially Saudi Arabia, sitting on a huge cash pile post the Ukraine war, since oil prices went high, they have lots of money. UAE has money. They are a trading post. UAE doesn't have any oil of its own, but it's a huge trading post, and they would like a lot of products to come into UAE and then be sold from that market. And that is what I think this entire initiative is going to work out. And I'm sure that India should actually tap into it, because we are only looking till India. Now look the other way around. From India, if we can build a corridor, which we are already doing, towards Thailand and the onwards towards Southeast Asia, that becomes a huge market again. And China predictably will be upset with it. Naturally, they have to be.
Yeah, Verghese, I want to ask you that, this G20 summit, which has been a huge success for India, someone was telling me that there was a time that, G7 nations would actually, for lack of any other word, bully, But then today, India has come out as a nation amongst developing countries to be able to pull this off and not just have it like an event, but also make lot of strategic decisions.
Well, the interesting part of this is, Sudha, we must understand that COVID, or in a post-COVID world, a lot of things have changed, especially when it comes to power structures. As Suresh Kochatal was saying, countries like Germany or the old Europe like France, Germany are having huge and humongous problems when it comes to their economy. They don't have the kind of market that they want to keep their factories push out the products as such. They need to find markets outside. They don't have a workforce. They after COVID, a lot of countries are facing workforce issues. That's why you see liberalized visa regimes for refugees that they have suddenly created, because their factories are shutting down because lack of manpower. All these factors have been put into place, and as of now, this particular aspect, as you said, when India comes to actually becoming that decision-making body as such, when it was G7 and it was a pre-COVID world, of course the G7 did not feature in all these aspects. But when COVID happened, they suddenly realized that everyone has put all their eggs in the Chinese basket. And the Chinese have been able to leverage it during the COVID period and also the post-COVID period in such a way it is technically strangling them.
Right.
They want to look at an alternative, and India is that alternative.
Sharad Trivedi, I also want to ask you that this entire nuanced language, apropos the Russia being an aggressor and the Ukraine war, somehow by doing this, Modi and the G20 summit, let me say, the Delhi Declaration has also sent out a message about war in more ways than one. That the softening, because see, there are critics who criticize this dispensation about surgical strikes, about not having what is called a no war policy, which is at a very superficial level, because war is a serious business. But do you think by doing this is also a kind of a diplomatic victory? That what is India's stand so far as war is concerned and the war in Ukraine?
Well, we have made it very clear that the war in Ukraine does not concern us, frankly. That's the bottom line. It is affecting the global north, it is affecting the finances, it is affecting the oil. But that is because one of the countries who are involved in that war is a very, very old friend of ours. They've been helping us from 1971 onwards, from even 1960 onward. They were the ones who sold us the MiG-21 supersonic, those magic planes at that time. So we have been very close to Russia, and we want this matter to be solved. In fact, Modi ji has already made moves. He's been in direct conversation with Mr. Zelensky as well as President Putin, that they want this matter to be sorted out. And he has also said it very categorically that this is not a time for war. So we want that matter to be sorted out, but we have had a very nuanced approach towards it. Like we've been buying S-400 from the Russians, all against the American, almost under the American nose. And we are buying G414 engines from America. We are buying C-130 planes. We are buying C-17 heavy lifters. So we've been, as Mr. Jaishankar has also said, that we are going to act on the basis of our own interest. As Lord Palmerston in the 19th century had said, countries do not have permanent friends, permanent enemies. They have permanent interests. So we are going to act upon our interests. We've been buying oil from Russia. We have been, in fact, refining it and selling it to the Europe. So we are going to act on the basis of things which are of keen interest to us. We are not going to act upon any pressure. That doesn't work on 1.45 billion people and people who have lead an economy of 3.5 trillion. We are from from $2 trillion economy in 2014. We are today, we've added $1.5 trillion in the last 9 years. It's a massive market. It is a market for Southeast Asia. It is a market for the Middle East. And we are selling products. We are selling world-class products now. In fact, Haifa port has also been acquired by one of the Indian industrialists.
Right.
Now we are no longer like multinationals are going to eat India, and those kind of the hardcore socialism days are over. We are buying companies abroad. West does not have their own steel company. It has been purchased by an Indian, Mr. Mittal. The ArcelorMittal is the largest steel owner in the world. England does not have an automobile company. One of the largest companies has been purchased by Tata, Jaguar Land Rover. So we are on the buying spree. We are investing all over the world. Even we are investing in US. TCS has made very heavy investments in US. So we are no longer the so-called third world or developing country. We are already on the cusp of development and heading to $5 trillion economy in maybe another 6 or 7 years' time.
Yeah, but you said a wonderful thing that nations, of course, you quoted, and you said that nations are supposed to protect their own interests. Some are saying that what you just said about Russia, Mr. Trivedi, it was something which was geopolitically started by Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. Would you agree that Mr. Modi is only taking forward what Nehru had started? Because we can go back into ancient history, but very briefly, would you agree that it is actually furthering what Nehru did?
Yeah, you've said it very rightly. Foreign policy does not change like river. It does not change like on the turn of the road. It flows like a river. It takes ages. It takes years, centuries for a foreign policy of a nation to turn. Like as it has been said, whether it was the Tsarist Russia or whether it was the current Russia or the communist Russia, the ships have to flow through have to go through the Straits of Bosphorus. So the strategic interests are the same, the strategic decisions are the same, and very little changes over a period of time. We've been non-aligned earlier, and we are non-aligned even today.
Right.
We are not going to submit to either the Western bloc or the so-called the Chinese bloc. We are out of it.
Right.
We are nowhere in the picture.
Suresh,
and we do not want to even subjugate other countries. We want everybody to prosper.
Yes, absolutely. And
We are the voice of the world.
Suresh, I wanted to ask you that, the US, of course, we all know, has poured millions of dollars into the billion of dollars. I said million, I mean billions of dollars into the Ukrainian war effort. But, there is now fatigue, do you think? And also to a great extent, do you think that's why the US has kind of, accepted the Delhi Declaration and India's presidency in kind of furthering that it is war in Ukraine and nothing more than that? Of course, Mr. Trivedi made it very clear that it is their war and we do not really have anything to do with it, save that we want peace across the world. But do you think there is general fatigue when it comes to the United States of America, and Biden is also facing an election year?
I think, yeah, the fatigue is the right word. I think both Russia and the NATO alliance, and especially the United States, is seeing a kind of a pushback right now. The Russians thought the war would be over quickly. The NATO alliance thought that they could throw all their unused arms and ammunition into Ukraine to see whether it really works. And we saw what we have been happening is Zelensky was kind of a PR machinery at work. Zelensky's operations, the way he dressed, way he walked, way he communicated, everything was a kind of a corporate PR kind of stuff that was done. I mean, that kind of stuff is good enough for a small while. I mean, after that, people get sick and tired of it and say, can we move on? Can we do something better? And Ukraine today is smashed. I mean, its economy is gone. Okay, Russia has also taken a huge hit. But what Russia has done is it's realized its friends in this war. And that is where India comes in at getting oil at, crude at 60 to $70 a barrel at the peak when the prices went to 120 in the international market was very huge. But I think one of the most important so that we missed out is about what India did with Bangladesh. Quite often we would ask, what was Bangladesh doing in a G20 meeting? And the pictures that we saw of, Sheikh, the Bangladeshi Prime Minister with her daughter, that is very important. Taking selfies with President Biden. I mean, as somebody was mentioning, the State Department usually does not like this kind of stuff with the president selfies being taken. They have a very strict protocol about it. But India brought Bangladesh on board. They deliberately know that to cut China off, they need to have Bangladesh on their side. And that is what they did. And Modi ji bought in. We have a crude deal with them, biofuels and everything thrown in. More importantly, with Saudi Arabia. And the statement by MBS that India we have more than 1,000-year relationship with India is very, very important. The spice route which India had with the Gulf in those times still works. Right. And that shows that, this relationship didn't start yesterday. It is older than possibly what even the US thinks it is. So, that is very important. How did you bring along the Islamic countries? Of course, we have this, organization of Islamic countries, OIC keep making noises once in a while. We need to ignore that. Bringing Turkey on, that is very important. True, right. Turkey at this point in time, they say, okay, we are opposed to this particular road initiative, whatever you call it, a link initiative, but that's fine. Turkey can be ignored. Turkey keeps changing its stance. But I think in the world stage, Modi ji has brought together disparate elements into one single table, sitting across and agreeing to something which they would not have otherwise agreed to.
Right.
And I think hats off should go to the team behind it. I think we are not giving them the due, be it Amitabh Kant and his team and others who worked hours on this kind of, these kind of words are very, very important. One full stop or a comma here or there, and these people wouldn't agree to sign it.
Right. You spoke about Bangladesh. I'm going to Sharat Trivedi and speaking about it. Mr. Trivedi, why is it that Bangladesh, who's a very important neighbor, and we have very deep cultural, emotional connect with Bangladesh, language being one, of course, and there is, of course, history going back. Why is it that Bangladesh does much better than Pakistan on several parameters? Whether it's GDP, whether I was amazed to see some export figures that they have. But why is it that it's great that you had Sheikh Hasina Sahiba, at the G20 conclave, and along with the daughter, like Suresh was saying, taking selfies, and her presence was felt. But why is it that, do you think that what needs to be done, considering now India has become somebody who's done a kind of a benchmark, who has a benchmark for G20, what do you think needs to be done more for Bangladesh, as it were?
I was almost about to say one thing before you commented on it, that there's what is probably called elephant in the room. There was a rat in the room called Pakistan, which we never mentioned. None of the panelists mentioned that. It's almost gone off the radar. And Bangladesh, even at the moment it got independent, it virtually went on a path of social reform. It went on an economic reform. And they are one of the largest exporters of textile in the world.
Yes.
Bangladesh is, on almost every count, they are 6 times the Pakistani GDP, the per capita income.
Which is not known, but which is eclipsed, Sharat Trivedi. That's what I'm saying, sir. Good you're talking about it, because Verghese, it is eclipsed.
It is.
You would always think that Bangladesh is this nation, where there is extreme poverty. Of course, they have a Nobel laureate, they have Grameen Bank, they have lot of floods. Apart from that, nothing really comes out. Go on, Mr. Trivedi. You said that they are 5 times or 6 times more than Pakistan?
Yeah, Bangladesh, first of all, that they literally nailed the fundamentalist elements there. There were no business to be there, and she has hanged those people who were involved in the assassination of her father, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. She has controlled the crime. She has controlled the trans-border movement. She has controlled the economic situation and these on almost all social indices. Bangladesh is like head and shoulders above Pakistan. In fact, it is one of the leading lights in South Asia. So Bangladesh is now no longer like the sort of backwaters of civilization. They are now a progressive country and almost showing a mirror to Pakistan. Pakistan is almost off the radar. Nobody even talks about it. I was almost about to comment before you mentioned that Pakistan is no longer on the horizon.
Absolutely. It is
In
not.
fact, even with this India and Middle East economic corridor, we have cut off Pakistan totally.
Yes.
They wanted to block our route to the Central Asia. We have gone to the Chabar port in Iran, and we have got a direct access to Afghanistan. We have a direct access to all the Central Asian countries. We are selling weapons to Azerbaijan. Now we are a next exporter. We have been selling almost 25,000 crores of weapons every year now. We are no longer an importer. So this is a whole new dynamic. It's a entirely new. The whole system has changed. The international we have almost cut the international system open the way we wanted it, and it has been recognized by the Russians and the Americans. We are in
Mr. Trivedi, let me come back to you. I think it is Prime Minister Modi now. We are expecting him to have reached the headquarters and to address the BJP Karyakartas and to celebrate the success of G20 along with everyone. That is Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh that we just saw, who has got off his vehicle and is greeting all the supporters who have gathered at the headquarters of the Bharatiya Janata Party in Delhi. Those are the visuals you are getting, and very soon after the Raksha Mantri, we can expect perhaps Prime Minister Narendra Modi to arrive and to join in the celebrations of the success of G20. I want to ask you, Verghese, that French President Emmanuel Macron, he had a different viewpoint about this Delhi Declaration and about the Ukraine war. He said that somehow you have isolated Russia. Would you agree to that?
Well, I think each one can interpret the way it is supposed to be interpreted.
Just a minute, Verghese. That's Manoj Tiwari.
भारतीय जनता पार्टी के लिए देश की सफलता, G20 की सफलता, नरेंद्र मोदी जी की प्रधानमंत्री जी की सफलता, इसको हम सैल्यूट करने के लिए आज यहाँ हमारे हजारों कार्यकर्ता मोदी जी का सम्मान करने आए हैं। विपक्ष परेशान है, लेकिन G20 की सफलता के साथ भारत बहुत महान हो गया है। हम लोग सबको मोदी जी को सैल्यूट करते, तिरंगे को सैल्यूट करते।
Yeah, you were saying, Verghese.
So I was saying that Macron, of course, will have to make that kind of a statement because, see, there was a compromise. The West had to compromise on that document because of the fact that India was also putting on pressure on the West, saying that you just can't keep this impasse going, affecting everyone. And the West is also not in a position because the impasse has been continuing between Ukraine. They have poured in money. Interestingly enough, corruption has been also highlighted in Ukraine. And we have seen how badly that has also affected the West's resolve when it comes to the Ukraine war. They have been asking for accountability from the Ukrainians as well. Zelensky has been asked to, or rather forced to, open up inquiries on his own men regarding the transfer of money. So these scandals have been happening as well. So Macron had to give that kind of a statement. But right now, at least the impasse is broken in India. And there is something, there's a forward movement to it. There is fatigue that is set in on the war front, but at least the war is now in the background and not in the foreground. People are talking economics, what can be done, what can be achieved. So that aspect, I think G20 has been able to break that impasse on that war front for quite some time.
Mr. Trivedi, as voice of the global south that, India has emerged, how do you react to what Ukraine, which was much expected, it was not nothing, it was not a bolt out of blue, where it perhaps sense the downgrading, that it had been given. It was so quick to denounce the declaration as nothing to be proud of. What is our government stand on this? Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, sure. Could you just repeat the question?
Certainly, where I was telling you that Ukraine, which is obviously feeling very insecure about possibly being abandoned right now, sensing the downgrading. I mean, it said about the declaration as nothing to be really proud of. I mean, what do you make of this?
First of all, this G20 meeting was not on the Ukraine crisis. It was on a global scale conference, and it had global issues. So Ukraine was just a part of the thing, and all the countries have agreed that the war should get over as soon as possible. It is in nobody's interest. The time is not a war. We are already in communication with President Putin and President Zelensky that some way this matter should be sorted out. Even the Turks are involved in the discussions. So we want this matter to be sorted out. It's in nobody's interest that the war goes on. So, but the discussion was not on Ukraine. That was a sideshow. Ukraine is not like the only
yeah,
thing
but today, if you look at it, I mean, the entire nuance thing about the Ukraine war is really being spoken about, and you open any Western newspaper, they're all speaking about it. It's somehow the Western bloc, has perhaps been press ganged, and automatically, organically. It's not that someone set out to do that, Mr. Trivedi, and therefore I asked you this particular question about Ukraine. Suresh, I want to ask you that, now let's look at what is the impact of it domestically. Critics have said Mr. Modi's picture on posters were larger than life. It was dwarfing other people's. You said just a little while ago that how the achievements of Amitabh Kant, the Sherpa, all of the achievements of the team, people who work day in and night, but then there has been immense criticism that it was all Mr. Modi and everyone else was totally kind of obliterated, as it were, in the visual representation of the G20. And therefore, the BJP will really make a big deal of it, both in the impending assembly elections as well as the Lok Sabha elections. Do you think, yeah, go on, Suresh.
I think that is what makes a difference. Modi ji, of course, everybody knows, markets himself really well. He's a champion at that. Branding, marketing, I think a lot of IIMs can learn lessons from how Modi ji does his, personality development, and how he comes across to say that I did this, I got it done. Of course, he doesn't say it directly, but we all know for a fact that if something had gone wrong, the blame would have been on Modi ji's shoulders, at his doorstep. So if something has gone wrong, I don't see anything wrong in somebody taking credit for it. It happens in corporate, it happens in news channel like you have. Everywhere else, the leadership takes the blame, the leadership takes the credit. Of course, it's teamwork at the end of the day. And that is why you see him sitting down with the police chiefs today to have dinner. Why? That is because to talk to them and say, look, we appreciate the work you did. He could have just ignored it because it's not a part of the protocol, but he got it done. He came in and he's making sure that everybody who worked behind the scenes, and you see those pictures in Bharata Mandapa also, where he's talking to the workers, where he's talking to the sanitation staff, the housekeeping staff, everybody, and that makes it. But the point there, I mean, Modi ji, end of the day, remember, brought this G20 to Delhi with a specific purpose. It didn't just happen with one meeting. Meetings happened across the country, from Visakhapatnam to Goa to Kerala to Srinagar. Everywhere the G20 happened. We opened up India like never before. We had our moments where we open up our monuments or we show our places, but here it was something different, where Modi ji showed the country, saying that this is the new India that you're talking to. This is our technology. And I mean, call it a coincidence or what? Chandrayaan followed by, had the movement, and that came in at the right time for Modi ji, and the world today is talking more about technology, about India's powers. We had all this before. But the problem with our country is that we are shy to take credit for anything. I mean, we are like that. I mean, that is what we are. There are some people who take credit, some people who don't take credit. And I think Modi ji will use it for the 2024 election for sure. And that is what he will do. I mean, this meeting, if you recollect, there was a similar meeting which happened after the 2019 elections when Modi ji came to the BJP headquarters. along with Home Minister Amit Shah.
Yes.
That time. There was a similar moment. I think we are just repeating. The timing is also same. I think it was around close to 7 o'clock television time, peak time when it starts. And that is the time Modi ji knows that he has to arrive. He arrives at the party headquarters, addresses his supporters. And then, that is a euphoric moment saying that, okay, here is a Kodak moment, take it. And that is what is happening in Delhi today. And I think I don't envy Modi ji for taking credit for it. Because as I said before, if something had gone wrong, if the resolution had not got passed, or some other attack would have happened in Delhi, some kind of attack would have happened. Things would have gone. One small rain and part of Bharata Mandapa open forum foyer getting flooded became big news. People are celebrating. The Congress Twitter handles were celebrating, saying that, oh, you built this, and so all the rainwater came in. And that's the point. One small incident actually, took away a bit of shine from the entire event as such.
Right. Varghese, I want to ask you this. The entry of the African Union, I beg your pardon, is seen as one of the most significant. Mr. Trivedi did speak about it initially, but for the benefit of the viewers, how important is that aspect of G20? Because we've spoken about domestic, and that's far away. Like today is not the day. I think I would like to speak about the assembly elections in Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan, Telangana, etc., or the 22, but more about the achievement of the G20, the African Union, as it were.
Well, that is a historic, in fact, admission that has happened when it comes to G20. African Union, the nations around Africa, well, they are in the process of going through a seismic change. You have governments in Africa that are looking at investment. You have governments in Africa that's looking at economics. Gone are the days when you had these dictators or people with autocratic powers who wanted to exploit, and then there were civil wars across Africa. Well, that part of Africa has gone. A lot of Africa is politically stable now. A lot of the leaders, there's a young African population that has been educated on Western values and at the same time aspire to be like the West.
Right.
So they are demanding more. So their leaders have to deliver on the ground. So you don't have the same old politics of civil war or others dominating. Each of them is talking about how they can be part of the global economic chain. So with that, when it comes to the global South, African Union is a part of this G20, becoming part of the G20 only contributes to that particular element. And so a lot of companies from India are in Africa. A lot of companies from China are in Africa. US has had its presence in Africa, and all of them are searching for one aspect, that is rare earth minerals. They're trying to mine across Africa because in the coming days, for your electronic industry, you require rare earth minerals, and it is being depleted. China has depleted its resources. We have not technically explored, or we have explored. It's still, there is some ambiguity about it, but the world is looking at Africa from that aspect because Africa has been known to give that natural resource as much as possible. So
right.
There is a huge investment that's happening from across the P5 as well as us in Africa, and therefore admittance of Africa was very important when it comes to this economic bloc.
I want to ask you, Mr. Trivedi, that Chinese President Jinping's absence from the summit and send Premier Li Qiang, it seems that despite the great bonhomie which was displayed and which has been proven at the G20 summit, the differences remain. I mean, there was this, what you may call it, is a muted presence of China. Would you agree?
Well, we have differences with almost every country. Even the best of friends have got differences. But the issue is that on this summit, they came, the world conquered. So it was not like winning or losing. This was a game for everybody, and everybody won. And in fact, I would like to add one thing here, that now there is a quantum shift in the perception about India. There's been a cultural revival. There has been an economic reinstatement on the position that we were, say, about 500 years back. We were 25% of the world GDP was India. So now we are coming back to that place. In fact, Africa has been very close before freedom struggle and after that also. Because even the Kenyan railway line, the South African railway line, the Ugandan railway line was built by Indians. And the stock was also sent from India. The rolling stock went from India. The engines came from India. So we have been a part of the African story all through. Now this has been recognized that Africans have to be, the African Union has to be part of the G20. They have to be on the world stage. And the perception in the West is also changing. The chairman of Google, the chairman of Microsoft, the chairman of YouTube, the US Vice President, the British Prime Minister, they are all from the formerly from India. So the perception that we are the cutting edge, we are no longer like we have to follow anybody. They have to follow us. Yoga has been accepted as an international event. There's an International Yoga Day. The whole world is following us. The Indian leadership is being reasserted. Yes, we are not in that position to come on the world stage at the level of US or China for that matter, but it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, but Suresh, like Mr. Trivedi said, it's going to happen, it's bound to happen, despite what I term as a muted presence of China, and India doing this great balancing act, of course, at the G20 summit, and I'm not saying it in a sarcastic way, but I mean it. But do you think that the very fact that China also signed on and there was consensus on the Delhi Declaration is a signal, Suresh?
Yes, China had to. There's no choice, because if you're sitting across the table and your joint secretaries or your secretaries who met up before, a month before or 2 weeks before or even a day before to decide on the exact nomenclature of words, had to sign on. Today, as was mentioned earlier in this conversation, we heard saying that China is being sidelined. As G20 was going on in Delhi, Chinese president hosted two heads of state, one from Venezuela, other from Zambia. Now look at this. Venezuela is broke with capital B, so is Zambia. Why did he invite these two countries? To show off that, look, I can put my flag out there. Maldives is seeing a resurgence of pro-China parties. China, we spoke about Africa. I was in Delhi a few months ago for attending the Indo-Africa Exim Conclave, and I met up with a number of industrialists from Africa, and I can tell you that the kind of inputs they're looking for, especially from a technology standpoint, is huge. We spoke about minerals and all that. That's correct. But they are also saying, how do we mine these minerals? How do we take it out? How do we set up factories in Africa? And to counter the Chinese influence in Africa, because we saw that the Russians are organizing coup in countries in Africa, and they want to set up their own regimes there. Welcome to the new world, and this is what it is all about. You're conquering new frontiers. Why does the Indian Army have a staging post in Maldives? We have. It is for a very, very obvious reason. The entire South China Sea and followed by the Indian Ocean. We need to have a flag post different places, and definitely Africa has been trading with India for a long, long time. We all know the spice route. We all know who came from Madagascar to Kerala to pick up the spices in those days, and those studies still continues. And that is what exactly it's all about. So be it a deal with Saudi Arabia or be it with Africa, we're rekindling the old past.
I wanted to talk to you also. I want you to respond to this whole the African issue that we were speaking about, their inclusion, as it were, of 55 countries, if I'm not wrong. I don't recall, 55, Fergus?
Close about.
Yeah, about that. Do you think that they will be able to kind of forge ahead despite their major differences? Yes, by and large there's been peace, but then there are several little elephants sitting in several rooms there, Suresh.
I think Africa has gone sick and tired of the coups they had. The military dictators they had. I think that they had enough of it. But the problem is the needling by China and Russia and even US to the for an extent. US, of course, burnt its fingers wherever it went. I mean, be it Somalia or wherever they had gone, they had burned their fingers. Be it Vietnam, in Southeast Asia, everywhere. The US is not a major player, of course, but they have their own kind of coups that they organize. But Africa, I think, has come to a stage where it has realized that if they don't keep up with the rest of the world and have this kind of instability in their backyard, they're going to pay for it. The next generation is going to pay for it. And they can become rich, there's no doubt about it, stock up billions in foreign bank accounts, but the country is going to get impoverished. South Africa came out of apartheid, and look at the way it's going ahead. There are many countries, Kenya is out there, Nigeria has tons of oil with it. These are the countries which will drive the future growth for the world. And Africa, again, like India, is a huge market. It's a huge market. except for the fact of the stability. India has the democracy which we keep criticizing, which Rahul Gandhi keeps criticizing, said that we don't have any democracy. But at the end of the day, we should say we have a legal system. We have a system where somebody defaults in paying you. You can go to the bank, you can go to the government, and you can appeal for it. China, you cannot do it. Africa, to a large extent, does not have that. I think that is being built up. Why is Exim Bank investing so much of money? I was hearing speeches by Dr. Jaishankar, Piyush Goyalji, and others at the conference. Huge amounts of money is being pumped in. Why is India pumping in so much of money? Of course, we have a selfish interest. We want our companies' products to be a kind of the countries to buy our products. This is what Japan does. Why does it fund all the kind of tubes and all the metro works? Because it wants the companies to buy their metro coaches, their metro engines, and that is where it's a selfish motive.
Mr. Trivedi, we've had a very successful G20 summit. India's presidency at the summit has been proven. We've achieved a lot. I mean, the Delhi Declaration with consensus there is, I think, the feather in our cap, in our crowns, as it were. What is the next steps as you look at it, even as Brazil, kind of now holds the baton?
So I think the landmark initiatives that have been taken in this conference, they are going to be brought forward, they are going to be reinforced. And the second is that the South will continue to maintain its dominance. Europe is already on decline, as Mr. Suresh has said. Germany is in recession. France is already having trouble. So all these countries which were formerly like the decision-making powers or the colonial powers are already on the way out. It's US which is going to be there, China is going to be there, third India is going to be there, and we are going to be the third largest economy. So, and the rest would, as they say, is history.
Right. And Verghese, let me ask you that today there is a contrast. India bloc, even as we speak, they are, formalizing their strategy both for the assembly elections as well as the Lok Sabha elections. And on the other hand, we have yet another India which is celebrating G20. I know that its comparisons are odious, we don't do it. But then look at it, I mean, what does it, for you, as a journalist, what does it signify?
See, there is one interesting aspect of the Indian government. When it comes to foreign policy, whether it is the BJP or the Congress or any other dispensation that might come in, they tend to have a continuity of sorts, and they do have this thing. When it comes to foreign policy, that continuity is something that is in fact surprised a lot of countries as well. Our neighboring arch rival Pakistan has also been surprised at how the India's continuity of its policies were. When governments change, it doesn't mean that India's policies change immediately. It's not that when the BJP come, they go very much close to the US, or that move away from Russia or don't engage with China. That particular aspect of it is something I see as a strategic way how the Indian government has been able to do it. Well, in the last 9 years, the BJP, that particular aspect of it, of being neutrally and autonomous when it comes to its relations with other nations, but at the same time,
right now, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Verghese, my apologies to both our guests, but there is a press conference which is happening on the opposition India bloc. Let's listen in. That's KC Venugopal. Got over, and we'll get you all the details in a bit. That was the India bloc meeting which was held at Sharad Pawar's residence in New Delhi today. The coordination committee's meeting, the coordination committee, that's Raghav Chadda of the Aam Aadmi Party, about to speak.
देखिए, जो बैठक में फैसला हुआ वो एक जॉइंट स्टेटमेंट के माध्यम से आप सबके सामने रखा गया है। जॉइंट स्टेटमेंट हमारी जो कोऑर्डिनेशन समिति है उसका हमने बनाकर आज जो भी मुद्दे आज कोऑर्डिनेशन समिति के भीतर लाए गए, जिन पे चर्चा हुई, उनके जवाब दिए गए हैं। मैं आ रहा हूँ, जवाब दिए गए हैं। और मोटे मोटे तौर पे जो फैसला लिया गया है वो एक तो ये है कि जल्द से जल्द तमाम पार्टियां आपस में बैठकर, जो मेंबर पार्टीज हैं, वो सीट शेयरिंग पे चर्चा कर फैसला लेंगी। दूसरा, एक पब्लिक रैली, जॉइंट पब्लिक रैली भोपाल में करने का फैसला लिया गया है, जो अक्टूबर के पहले हफ्ते में होगी। और मुख्य तौर पर जो मुद्दे इस रैली में हाईलाइट किए जाएंगे वो रहेंगे बेरोजगारी, भ्रष्टाचार और महंगाई। तीसरा फैसला जो लिया गया है वो ये है कि रिस्पेक्टिव मेंबर पार्टीज हैं वो कास्ट सेंसस के मुद्दे को उठाएंगी। और चौथा ये लिया गया है कि कुछ ऐसे जो हमारी मीडिया सब ग्रुप से रिकमेंडेशन आई थी, कुछ ऐसे एंकर्स हैं जो देश में भड़काऊ बहस कराते हैं, उनकी सूची जारी कर उनसे इंडिया अलायंस उनके शोज पे जाना बंद करेगी।
सहमति भी कास्ट सेंसस को है?
नहीं, देखिए, जो भी आज सदस्य मेंबर पार्टीज आज जो मौजूद थी कोऑर्डिनेशन समिति की, उन सबकी सहमति है। जो लोग आज मौजूद नहीं भी हो पाए थे कोई और व्यस्तता के कारण, उनसे हम चर्चा करेंगे, लेकिन आज जितने लोग इस बैठक में मौजूद थे सबकी सहमति है कास्ट सेंसस।
लेकिन वहां पे आप लोग चुनाव लड़ रहे हैं,
उसके आराम से आपसे विस्तार से चर्चा करेंगे।
So there you had Aam Aadmi Party's Raghav Chadha, who was speaking to the press. Now Hemant Soren is about to be speaking to the
तुम लोग के सवाल गिरते हैं यार।
इंडिया भारत शब्द का इस्तेमाल होता रहेगा
उसको लेकर बहुत कंट्रोवर्सी हो रही है।
आप लोगों को क्या कंफ्यूजन है बताइए?
आप बताइए। इंडिया भारत ये थे झारखंड के मुख्यमंत्री।
He kind of totally avoided that question whether it's going to be India or Bharat. But Varghese, did you find that interesting what Raghav Chadha said, and of also curtailing what they call, that's Omar Abdullah about to speak to the press right now.
We'll look at it. I mean, one of the things I had proposed, which is something that we're going to have to discuss, is that seats that are already held by members of the India bloc should not be open for discussion. We should be discussing those seats that are held by either the BJP, the NDA, or parties that are not part of either of those alliances. But the seats that are already held by India members, those shouldn't come on the discussion table unless the party that holds them is sort of willing to surrender a seat. No, this is something only. I just mentioned it today. It's not something that we've decided.
Right.
Look. Anyway, what has been decided today is that parties will nominate their various representatives at whatever level appropriate for them to start discussions. Now he's reading out the statement. वो statement पढ़ रहे हैं ना? क्या हो गया आपका?
भी हो रही है
राजनीतिक पल पल बदल।
There you have it, visuals on your screen right now, and we are saying that JP Nadda is now greeting all the waiting leaders, and these are shots that you are getting live from BJP headquarters in New Delhi, where the G20 success is going to be celebrated. Prime Minister Modi shall share his success with his party workers, of course, and later in the day he is also going to be having dinner with police officials, commending them for their stellar role for organizing the security and safety of all the world dignitaries during the G20 Summit. There you have it. JP Nadda has arrived. Before that, Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh had also arrived at the BJP headquarters. The BJP headquarters is actually really decked up. Look at that. I mean, I would like my producer friends to please focus on those shots. That's JP Nadda, of course, entering the BJP headquarters, getting ready to welcome Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who's going to be there very, very shortly to address the BJP Karyakartas on the success of G20 Summit, on which we have been speaking for almost 45 minutes about how it is indeed a feather in our respective collective caps. Before that, that's Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh, who has arrived. He arrived before Mr. J.P. Nadda. He's also seen here making his way inside the office of the BJP headquarters in New Delhi. Verghese also wants to, ask the guests some questions. Mr. Trivedi and Suresh, this is Verghese Abraham. He's going to be asking Mr. Trivedi some questions apropos G20.
Well, Mr. Trivedi, when we have discussed several aspects about the G20, we have spoken about how we have changed our foreign policy to an extent. I'm not saying I was actually arguing there was a continuous strategic vision to that policy. We have become assertive. We have become what we call as being conscious of our place in the world. But at the end of the day, when we go ahead and try to project our soft power, there is an issue about trying to face the Chinese checker at certain places. Maldives, you are facing it right now. We do find that China does tend to play spoil sport in certain places. But at the same time, we have to we have trade ties with that country. We deeply engage with trade in that country. This uneasy relationship that we have with them, how long is it in fact going to go? And G20, of course, was a venue over there where they were the first ones to, go ahead and speak for the Russians. But we have been able to bring them around as well. But it's quite an uneasy relationship that we have with China. How long do you think this is going to go on?
Well, the world, I think the next 50 years is going to be dominated by India and China, because the debt diplomacy the Chinese have indulged in has shown the world what it is. Bangladesh is suffering because of it. As you said, Maldives is suffering because of it. African countries are almost in the dumps. Pakistan has got a $70 billion Belt and Road pipeline and power stations which they don't know what to do, because as long as they are not paying for the power, they are not getting the power. So the Chinese, the primary diplomacy that they're using is coercive or the debt diplomacy, and both have failed utterly. In the South China Sea, the Americans are pushing back. The entire Southeast Asia has become almost a frenemy or a near enemy of China. They have messed up with every country. You name the Philippines, the Vietnam, the Laos, Cambodia, Malaysia, Indonesia. All these countries are in a mess only because of China. So they've all realized it. And the Quad is giving such a massive backup support. The Australians are getting nuclear submarines from about 8 or 12 nuclear submarines from the US. So this Quad is covering that area. The Belt and the String of Pearls initiative has almost collapsed. Nobody wants to. We've seen what has happened in the Hambantota project in Sri Lanka, and then they gave us a Trincomalee port. But what happened there? It was a total mess. Finally, they had to put it on lease. We are not doing debt diplomacy. They have seen that we almost got the Sri Lankans and the Maldivians out of the debt which the Chinese had got them into. We are supporting the Mauritius. We had this. The vaccine diplomacy are providing 220 million doses of vaccine all over the world, much more than what China did. And China's opaque system has the Evergrande has collapsed. And another company probably which is bigger than Evergrande has also collapsed. Chinese are in a total mess. What Deng had done, Xi Jinping has done almost totally opposite to what Deng had done. So they are in a mess. I don't think that they are going to survive this for a very long time. They have to make some major reforms. They are not going to continue like this. But India and China have got to be the key to the 21st century and onwards. And the border problem will continue because Chinese are not backing off no matter what kind of diplomacy we are using. We have all got equal number of troops on the border on either side. They know that they cannot do it. But in fact, the UN Security Council seat is being denied to India only because of China. All the rest of the 5 powers, the 4 powers have agreed to it. So this is the only problem that we are facing. And Chinese are going to continue to meddle around in India, in our vicinity. They are having problems with Bangladesh also. There's not a single country, including Pakistan, the best friends forever. They are also in a mess. They are cursing each other day in and day out. So the issue is that China will continue to be the dominant force in the Far East for the time being, till India catches up, and then things will just go on the way they are.
Is what we've been projecting, but how much of hard power we will be able to project in the neighborhoods that we want to extend our influence in?
No, we are having a massive naval deployment up to, we are having ships visiting Philippines. We are selling the BrahMos missiles to Philippines. We have in fact given a couple of frigates to and naval missile boats to Vietnam. We are selling missiles to them also. And we are also covering a counter string of pearls strategy. We are having relations and the port calls by the Indian Navy in Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, Philippines, and Taiwan is the main reason because of what all this is happening. And the US is also pushing against them. China is not going to be the flavor of the world for a really long time. Either they mend their ways or they're going to be in real big mess.
Well, Suresh Kochatal, how do you see India's power push right now, especially when it comes to China? Because in the G20, of course, we didn't have Xi Jinping coming in for that particular meet, and you have Biden saying it was a big disappointment. But pushing against China, is it going to be this frenemy kind of a situation that we are going to see in the foreseeable future when it comes to a foreign policy with China?
Yes, I think it's very clear that the Chinese are playing a very high stakes game here. They know that their existence is in tune with the economy. If their economy doesn't pick up in the post-COVID world, as we're seeing it is not, if the manufacturing units move out of China, and if the Chinese internal demand doesn't pick up, China is in big trouble. Their housing sector is already facing a lot of problems, and that is going to add on to the woes. If the banks collapse, of course, we will never know, because unlike India, which has a RBI and other things where we know what's happening with our banks, we know what's happening with our economic system, the Chinese can always bluff. They can always add up a couple of percentage to the GDP and say we have done so much. We can never trust them because we never know their real state. As was mentioned, the South China Sea, very important, because the China is flexing the muscles often out there. They're claiming islands which they have no control on or they don't have any rights about. They're trying to browbeat the Southeast Asian nations, and India rightly stepped in there. Now, this is where Australia is coming in. It's very important because Australia has a lot of influence in that region. Remember the Bali bombings and other things that took place long, long ago? The number of people from Australia who were killed were immense in that. And that is where the entire thing is coming, because Australia has high stakes, and naturally US also likes to stay in that game. And that is where the entire thing about trying to control the Chinese, not to grow beyond a point. The Chinese control a huge amount of US debt today. And if they dump the debt, US is in trouble. The US knows that very well. And the manufacturing is one way to suck out that economy out of China. And that is what is being encouraged. And luckily for us, the PLI initiative has worked well. We have seen phone companies moving out. We are seeing car companies moving out. And unless there is a local demand, we will not see more units coming back to China. And it will never go back, because US always, it's a political hot potato in US where the manufacturing sector has to be seen to be US centric. There has to be jobs in the US, and they don't want their cars to be built in China like the good old days. That all is going to change. So India definitely has a stake here. Our investment into our defense, especially our Andaman and Nicobar command, is going to be very, very crucial for us, because it's a huge listening post for us. We of course have something in Maldives, but we are likely to lose that as soon as the next election comes up, because the only pro-India party is now in the second place, so we won't be having much of a stake there. But we need to build new outposts. We need to ensure that our Ladakh, which we lost, the almost 43,000 square kilometers, which was gifted to the Chinese, and now the Chinese call Aksai Chin, that is where it's all moving. 5 kilometers, the army moves, Chinese army moves here or there on a non-defined border, the McMahon line or whatever you want to call it. The Chinese always will make a big issue out of it. Our party and our medias here pick up those stories and say, oh, you know what? The Chinese are sitting on our land. What about the 43,000 square kilometers which we gifted, which is bigger than Punjab? Why did we gift it to the Chinese just like that without even having a fight? We need to get back that. But the Chinese say, no, Tibet is ours, Aksai Chin is ours, Arunachal Pradesh is ours. And we need to, I mean, the kind of investment that India is doing in the last 9 years, Bharat is doing, I should say, in the last 9 years in building roads in Arunachal Pradesh, roads in Ladakh, building new airstrips in different places along those very, very crucial border states, positioning the Rafales in Arunachal Pradesh and in Ladakh. Those are very, very important things. China knows that these are the moments where the India will definitely play a game, and the US is there to bankroll them. The US will give them the defense support, which was heavily dependent with Russia till now.
Well, interesting enough, we've seen that game of checkers that has been played out as such. Mr. Trivedi, how do you see when it comes to our South Asian space? SAARC has been suffering a lot because of what Pakistan has been doing, and of course the frosty relationship that we have. Is there a way to revive SAARC minus Pakistan?
Well, I think Pakistan is, as we've been discussing before, Pakistan is almost irrelevant. They don't exist for almost anybody. It's totally irrelevant. It is going to be India and China. Bangladesh is now one of the closest allies of India. Sri Lanka has always been, Nepal, Bhutan. All these countries are going to be part of the Indian sphere of influence, and things are going to be our way. As Mr. Suresh said about the Andaman, the Joint Forces Command in Andamans, that is the unsinkable aircraft carrier 40 kilometers from the from Malaysian border. So we are going to be part of the Indian Ocean. We are there. We have got the surveillance routes almost entering about 2,500 kilometers into the Indian Ocean. Mauritius has got an airport which is funded by India. It is serving the Indian Air Force and Navy. So we are part of this game, and it is going to be played both ways. It's going to be just tug of war on either side. And Chinese, as we've been saying, Chinese manufacturing is going down only because the West is they are out of flavor with the West, because what they are messing up in the South China Sea. If the US the manufacturing is happening in China, but the buyer is all the US companies, the European companies. The moment they say that we are not buying from you, the entire system collapses. China, how much are they going to buy? The main buyers are the Western countries. They have moved out. The technology control regimes are in place. They are not getting semiconductors. There is one company probably in Belgium which manufactures the lenses which make these and the machines which make these semiconductors. They have stopped selling them. It is going to in fact, not even China, even moves are being made to move the semiconductor manufacturing from Taiwan to other countries. India is already investing huge amount in semiconductor manufacturing. We have found huge reserves of the battery raw material in Kashmir.
Right.
So India is 1.35 billion democratic people who have faith in freedom of the economic order. They are going to rule. In fact, the closest country to US is India. We have the same demographics there as far as the kind of people who are there, not in the number of people who are there, but the same kind of people, the same economic system, the same political system is there. So we are going to outshine. The 1.35 billion buyers are also there, 1.35 billion sellers are also there. We are going to be probably the end of the 21st century will find India is to be the superpower.
Indeed, we wish that to happen, Sharad Trivedi ji. Pankaj Mishra this side. Obviously, one quick also comment from your side. You're right when you say that India is investing a lot in artificial intelligence and semiconductors. And we saw when Prime Minister Modi was in US, he clearly said that AI has a new definition, which is America and India. And needless to say, the dependence of AI on semiconductors, the cutting edge technology that is required. In your opinion, sir, these modern day requirements of a particular country, how do you see BJP, especially Prime Minister Modi, making sure that these needs are also attended to, apart from giving proper sanitation, banking facilities, sar par ek chhat de rahe hain? How is this government making a balance of between the two?
We have got one of the third largest number of startups in the world. We have got the third largest number of upcoming technological companies in the world. Bangalore, Hyderabad are brimming with these kind of companies. We are now the second largest manufacturers of mobile phones in the world. We have had 1.6, and if we go deep into the heart of the country, we have 11 crore people coming out of poverty, above the poverty line. We have had 1.6 crore gas connections. We have got 1.8 crore electricity connections. It's massive. The whole transformation is being made. We had the population, we did not have the skills. Now we have got a skill program, Skill India program, which is going to give the proper skills which are needed by the industry. We have got artificial intelligence centers in Kanpur IIT, one in Lucknow, one in Gautam Buddha Nagar. So it is transformation across the board. We have the largest refinery in the world in Gujarat. We are no longer like, okay, we are not the kind of people who also ran. We are the people who are setting the goalposts.
Absolutely, absolutely. And setting the goalposts and also setting the agenda, not just in the country, but also in the world. Suresh Kochetalji is also there with us. Sir, well, the visuals obviously on screen clearly depict that the rousing welcome that Prime Minister Modi is going to receive at the BJP headquarters needs no mention there. But good reason for BJP to celebrate, obviously, after a G20 leg, which many of the previous hosts said was by all standards exemplary. Sureshji.
What, the question for me? Yeah.
Yes, Sureshji. The reason for BJP to come back home and celebrate, I think it's much due. It's all deserved.
Yeah, I think why not? I mean, as I mentioned before, when something goes wrong, you take the buck stops with you, and when something goes right, you celebrate that moment. And it is not easy. Across the world, I mean, if you look at various channels and various newspapers across the world, I've been reading their online editions. Everywhere there's a talk that India did it. I mean, there is not much of mention about the other countries, who came for the conference. But there is one particular talk that Narendra Modi got all of them under one umbrella, got a resolution which nobody would have otherwise agreed to, got it signed for whatever it was worth, and then built on the economic aspects of it, the climate change of it, everything on that. And that is very important. Leadership at the end of the day is all about getting things done. Simple as that. And Modi ji has been, I mean, you look at 2014, before 2014, Lal Krishna Advani ji was given 2 chances to bring BJP back, but he didn't. And obviously the party leadership took a chance and said, okay, we're going to bring in a new leader who can possibly lead the party to victory and become the Prime Minister. And Modi ji did it twice now, and the third time he's trying out. So there's no harm in BJP celebrating it. As much as Congress and other opposition parties are trying to pull down, you see Jairam Ramesh tweeting almost every minute. And what is he trying to say? He said Nehru held bigger conferences than this. I mean, I've been seeing Pragati Maidan from donkey's years from the time I was a kid. That drab-looking place is today shining with Bharat Mandapa. Look at the difference. That means if you wanted it, you can do it. That's a question of there. Those kind of majestic way the flags have been put up, the kind of VIPs walking up. All those make impressionable moments. Geeta Gopinath being, Ajay Banga being there, Rishi Sunak being there. These are moments. There are real Kodak moments where Rishi Sunak is sitting next to Sheikh Hasina Wajid and speaking to her barefoot at Rajghat. And that is what makes all these impressions. Suddenly, you're the flavor of the world, and I don't envy BJP for celebrating it. Yes, they might go a little bit over the top. That is fine. But the party will celebrate because if anything had gone wrong, they would have been under fire. Just like that flooding that happened, a small incident which Congress quickly latched onto and said, oh, look, they spent so much and look what happened. They couldn't even handle the rain. Yeah, that is what it is all about. The question is, when did we last do something like this? When did we last organize a conference like this? It's extremely difficult. The kind of logistics that have been involved in this would have been humongous. Number of world leaders arriving in Palam technical area cannot take that many aircraft. How did they manage all that? The security aspect of it. The kind of traffic that Delhi would have got gridlocked onto it. I'm not sure because not there now. So you people have been there. So you know how it was. But all those things add up at the end of the day. As I saw one Congress tweet which said government spent 4,200 crores where Indonesia spent only 300 crores. Well, the point is, if you had a wonderful structure like Bharata Mandapa, which was built, say, 10, 15 years ago, or you had good roads and great kind of traffic management system in place, then you need not have invested. The problem was we never invested in all that. We never invested in our infrastructure like we are doing now. If that had been done, all that expenditure would have been only on the food and other aspects of it, but nothing beyond that. But then those were not available. Pragati Maidan was never remodeled. That is what it was. The biggest conference center in India at one time was Hyderabad. I mean, till Bharat Mandapa came up with HICC in Hyderabad, which could take 6,000 people at one go. But beyond it, what? As a country, India needed something more humongous, more bigger stuff. And we have shown that we could do it. We could do it within a short period of time. We could turn it around. And more importantly, I wish to thank those faceless thousands of people who worked behind the scenes. Be it the sanitation workers, be it the workers who kept the roads clean, be it the traffic management, be it the security official, the hotel staff, everybody, they all need to be complimented. Modi ji was just a leader, but there were many other people who kind of worked behind the scenes, and they are the real winners in this entire episode.
Indeed, indeed. My colleague Varghese is also there. Varghese, obviously, the government of India took charge and conducted a very successful G20. Now, obviously, the cynic, the opposition might say that why celebrations at the BJP headquarters?
Of course, they would be asking about it. But then I was just telling the guests that when it comes to foreign policy, there's the continuity when it comes to this country. Nobody questions about the strategic importance of how we conduct our policies. Interestingly, there are several anecdotes that even foreign governments have been surprised at the surprising nature of our continuity when it comes to foreign policy. They thought that if the party changes, the policy would be discontinued, but that was not the case. Because when it comes to foreign policy, it followed one basic rule, that is to look after India's interests only. So in that way, yes. But for domestic audience, of course, you have something that has to be given. So the opposition would, of course, go ahead and say that there's nothing to be, great about it. As Suresh Kochatal was saying, that you had greater conferences being held, is what the Congress kept saying. There was a time, I mean, whether there was a Cold War era when you required NAM, there was an era when you required SARC. I mean, India has also been evolving with the times as such. So we don't have the same geopolitical realities as we have it today. And today, when it comes to G20, at least we did take that leadership and we did make it an outcome. The impasse in Bali was completely taken out of the picture, and you have some working arrangement happening. And the Ukraine war, as I was saying, is now in the background, is not in the foreground, is in the background. So therefore, whatever factors that were leading to an impasse has ended, and you have Russia happy about it. You have our ally who's been sticking with us for quite some time has been happy about it. The Chinese, of course, had questions being raised, but to an extent they are also comfortable with what has happened. And you have the rest of the West, which did go for that kind of a climb down, but at least they have something to take on the plate. So everybody knows that it has to go beyond the Ukrainian definition of what is happening in Ukraine. Let the talks parallelly take, but that shouldn't hold such international groupings hostage. So that is the factor that was in fact involved in this, and therefore it's a great success. That's why I said there are a lot of backroom talks that happened. The Prime Minister looking to the details of every aspect of the meet. The G20, of course, the culmination summit is what we saw, but it has a series of meetings have been happening, and the outcomes were much higher than we expected. So in all those levels, yes. To the current geopolitical world, India has made itself more relevant. It has become more a nation that will sit on the high table of international politics. So all these aspects are to be looked into when it comes to it. So I think let's in fact see how it is going to pan out. But of course, domestic politics, you and I know we have a 2024 elections. So domestic politics is going to play out. But a lot of leaders within the opposition camps also know that they have carried out with the continuation of India's foreign policy. That's why you have Tharoor in fact tweeting it out as well. So those who understand the strategic part of it do understand about it, but then you have a domestic political audience to please.
Right, absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, stay with us. Prime Minister Modi's cavalcade making its way to the BJP headquarters in the central part of Delhi, and with the entourage, it appears that yes, this is Prime Minister Modi's cavalcade. Amit Shah, Home Minister, is also expected to be there. I think his entry would be before the Prime Minister. Last gathering, Varghese, I remember, of this sort was, I think, the victory in 2019 elections. That was one time when I remember BJP top-notch leaders gathering, the topmost leaders. Yes, there is.
Yes, the last time of a gathering of the sorts was seen in 2019, and you had a huge gathering of people.
And I think after Uttar Pradesh also, I'm
now
sorry.
Uttar Pradesh also, but
think so.
I think this kind of a victory march was there then also. And of course, the Prime Minister was giving a rousing welcome then. And today also we can expect that kind of welcome to be accorded to the Prime Minister. And of course, it's going to be a big day for them. They're going to celebrate it because it's been considered as a flagship program that they want to do. The BJP as a party has been also looking forward for that particular meet, and they have been able to successfully showcase it as part of India's strategic successes, and therefore they would want to showcase it for the 2024 election as a success and achievement. So keeping all these factors in, I think this is the best that would have happened.
Right. Visuals coming in from the BJP headquarters in Delhi. Sharad Trivedi ji, if you are still there with us, help us understand and explain this building, the locality of which obviously it's in right next to ITO, which is a landmark in itself, and obviously I believe Varghese New Delhi railway station is also quite nearby from this place. Not many journalists and people, Mr. Trivedi, have ventured inside the building. When obviously in such big scenarios, when party's victory in a particular state or in the nation is being celebrated, or an equally important G20 meeting has been successfully concluded, what is the state of affairs? What happens in the anticipation before the Prime Minister comes? We saw Home Minister, Defence Minister going into chambers there. What is it all about inside this building?
Well, this building is a truly majestic building. It's a very imposing building. It's made of red sandstone and Vastu compliant. It's got really open spaces, lot of open spaces there. Vastu and Feng Shui is also been taken care of. It's a very welcoming building. You feel that you are part of the infrastructure. And I would like to just add one thing with what my friend has been saying, that if we go beyond the economic power, beyond the nuances, beyond the 1.35 billion people that we are, beyond the market, beyond the exporting potential of the country, we look at the very subtle things that are happening, like International Yoga Day. Then we have Papua New Guinea, president of an elected of a democratic country, touching the feet of the Prime Minister of another country, who does not even belong to the same religious background, who does not belong to the same cultural background. It's absolutely remarkable. Nobody said it. It's something we couldn't have imagined, say, 10 years back. It's actually remarkable that he really felt the charisma of Prime Minister Modi and he touched his feet. This is truly what India is today. The world is recognizing it. We know it all along. But now the world is recognizing our power, our diplomacy, our soft power, our hard power. Everything is out in the open. And I just said back on the program that one, what we call the proverbial elephant in the room, there was a sort of a rat in the room. That was Pakistan. It's not even mentioned now. We have heard in last couple of years, Pakistan, barring those 2 surgical strikes in Pulwama and Uri, we don't hear that there is a country called Pakistan, which virtually controlled our economy, which controlled our foreign policy, which controlled our defense policy. All through, we do no calculation of India is dependent on what Pakistan thinks. It's off the radar, and the world also recognizes. So these small subtle things have gone a big way in building up the structure of the country, and Prime Minister Modi has been absolutely a hands-on Prime Minister. He does not leave anything to chance. Whether as the Chief Minister of Gujarat or whether the Prime Minister of the country, what he said it, he did it. Nobody could imagine that Swachhata Abhiyan would become a national mission. He did it. Nobody knew that what was the importance of gas in the house. He did it. We have the electricity connection in the house. Every house has an electricity connection. Every village has got electricity connection. We have got 40% of all digital transactions are being done in India. This is the technological reach of our people. We have now got ignited minds. What President Abul Kalam had said. We are now the ignited minds. His dream has come true.
True, absolutely. Mr. Kochitil, obviously Mr. Trivedi's profound words definitely strike a chord with the common masses, because there are stats and figures to back them up, and also looking at the reception, the warmth, the candidness during the G20, the way leaders would hug and meet each other, obviously with Prime Minister Modi at the helm, shows a different picture of India altogether, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it's end of the day, the power speaks. That is very, very obvious. If you command respect at home, definitely you will command respect across the world, and that is very, very important. And we should know this, because end of the day, in India, Prime Minister Modi, for whatever said and done, commands that respect. And definitely that kind of respect today is being commanded across the rest of the world. And surely what was done in Delhi, or what we saw in Delhi in terms of the reception, in terms of the, the dinner, in terms of the meetings that were held, all of them, even the backdrop, the Konark Sun Temple backdrop, where Prime Minister Modi explaining what it is. These are our soft powers, our educational institutions or Nalanda and Takshashila being shown in the morning session. Why did all those imagery come across? They came across because we wanted to project that we are not there, a nation which just came up last month. We are there from thousands of years. We were the center of mathematics and science long before others were there. And that is where the Sushrutas of the world came in. And definitely, I think what has happened is that we were able to bring forth this narrative. We were very shy of speaking about our achievement. That is the problem with we Indians. We are very, very shy about speaking about our achievement. We don't like to tom-tom about it. But then there are chances like this in the international world. I mean, the hen that lays one egg goes around, talks, the entire world says it laid an egg. It need to do that. Otherwise, nobody cares a damn for you. Today, power, jiske haath mein lathi uski bhains, simple as that. And that is today's world. You have to have that power, which is why Pakistan is out of the equation. Nobody's talking of Pakistan, as was mentioned before. Why? Because they're struggling to get things to eat out there. A liter of petrol costs 236 rupees today. There is not much to go around. There's no electricity. There was a joke going on the other day that Pakistan has also landed on the moon. And the guy was saying, look, there is no power in the moon. Yes, there's no power in Pakistan too. And that is exactly the problem. And that is where I think India has scored. It has maintained that discipline, the financial. Look, two nations went into a kind of a tailspin, Sri Lanka and Pakistan at the same time. Sri Lanka came out of it. Why? Because they had a very astute political leadership. They took backing from countries like India to get their fuel and other requirements. They took funding from IMF, took on some conditions, and they did it. But Pakistan still believes. We saw what happened at Rajouri today, where a Labrador can lay down her life for the Indian army. And that is what it is. Pakistan still continues to believe that it can fund jihad as a way forward. No, they need to realize even Saudi Arabia doesn't like jihad in its backdrop. They don't like it. And that is exactly the point. Jihad is gone. If you still keep on harping about Kashmir, nothing is going to come out of it. Pakistan has to rebuild its country, and that is not easy, because the only common thing that binds entire Pakistan is the hate for India. And that is there for everyone to see. And Modi ji has taken that entire focus away, saying, who is Pakistan? Where is Pakistan? We have no idea about it.
Right, gentlemen, stay with us. As we speak, as this particular congregation at the BJP headquarters is happening, not far away in Delhi itself at Sharad Pawar's residence, the Coordination and Election Strategy Committee of the India Alliance has met for the first time. And this is happening in New Delhi. The bloc deliberated over seat sharing and joint campaign plan for the Lok Sabha elections 2024. And the committee has decided to hold talks to agree upon seat sharing at the earliest. Now, TMC MP Abhishek Banerjee, who was called by the Enforcement Directorate for questioning today, could not attend the meeting. Others who were not present included a few names, obviously. The meeting has just concluded, by the way, and the Congress has once again, after 3 meetings, has said that the seat sharing part would be discussed and disclosed soon. K.C. Venugopal spoke. Let's listen in.
The first meeting of the coordination committee was held today at the Sharad Pawarji's residence and attended by 12 member parties. Sri Abhishek Banerjee of All India Trinamool Congress could not attend the meeting due to the summon by Enforcement Directorate arising out of the vendetta politics of Bharatiya Janata Party and the Prime Minister. The coordination committee decided to start the process for determining the seat sharing. It was decided that the member parties will hold the talks and decide at the earliest. The committee decided to hold joint public meetings in different parts of the country. The first public meeting will be held at Bhopal in the first week of October in the issue of rising prices, unemployment and corruption of BJP government. The parties present in the meeting agreed to take up the issue of caste census. The coordination committee authorized the subgroup of media to decide upon the names of the anchors on whose shows none of the India parties will send their representatives. These are the decisions, these are the outcome of this today's meeting. The first meeting of the coordination committee.
So, India Bloc there explaining about the details of the meeting and what transpired in New Delhi. Meanwhile, moving on now, it was a friendly banter but could give an insight as the India Bloc met today. West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee met Sri Lankan President Ranil Wickremesinghe at the Dubai International Airport. The West Bengal Chief Minister invited Ranil Wickremesinghe for a summit in Kolkata. The Sri Lankan President took the West Bengal Chief Minister by surprise by asking her whether she will lead the opposition alliance. Taken aback by the unexpected question from Ranil, Mamata Banerjee laughed it off, saying it all depends on the people. Let's watch this friendly exchange between both the leaders.
Oh my God.
You are all wondering, huh?
It depends on people, you know. We believe that democracy.
Question she has not answered you.
Yes, sir, I answered.
No, is she going to lead the opposition alliance?
Sir, opposition may be position also.
Mamata Banerjee, obviously, she was heading to Spain earlier, and Ranil Wickremesinghe obviously meeting her at the Dubai International Airport. Both of them being a friendly neighboring country. Sri Lanka, obviously, the Indian cricket team is also playing there in the Asia Cup. We saw yesterday also India beating the host Sri Lanka, and day before it was Pakistan that faced a defeat at the hands of Indian cricket team. Now, obviously, in a moment of rare candor, Ranil Wickremesinghe asking Mamata Banerjee whether she would be the leader of the opposition. He also knows the dynamics as it is playing out in the India bloc. No clear names of the prime ministerial candidate, for that matter the convener also. So needless to say, to have a friendly dig, Ranil Wickremesinghe asking Mamata Banerjee whether she would be the head of opposition. And Mamata Banerjee, being an astute politician herself, dodging it and giving a very befitting reply, saying that it all depends on the people, the masses, the voters, and why not? We have seen, earlier these kind of exchanges at several other occasions also, and Ranil Wickremesinghe, we saw him just a few months ago. He was there in India as well, and that was his first visit to India after assuming power in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, remember, facing a critical economic scenario, and as of now, thanks to India's support and the global support on the behest of India, Sri Lanka is where it is right now, has managed to keep its head above the water. And now shifting focus to the BJP headquarters, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi is expected to visit. The cavalcade is once again there, appears to be that of the Prime Minister. Remember, all the top-notch political leaders from the BJP.
जी, सफलताओं का एक पूरी लिस्ट है, फहरिस्त है जो मोदी जी ने इस देश को दी है गौरव करने के लिए। हम सभी कार्यकर्ता भी बहुत गौरव के साथ, बहुत उत्साह के साथ यहाँ उनकी एक झलक देखने के लिए आए हैं और हम सब बहुत निहाल हैं कि मोदी जी ने इतने बड़े बड़े काम करे हैं। मोदी जी जैसी लीडरशिप न भूतो न भविष्यति, तो उनको अभी हम सबका ये आशीर्वाद है, हमारी मनोकामना है ईश्वर से कि वो 20 साल 25 साल ऐसे।
There we heard enthusiastic supporters and BJP cadre waiting anxiously at the BJP headquarters in the national capital. And obviously, the Prime Minister would be making his way to the headquarters to meet the party cadre. Obviously, the party has kept this celebration in order to thank him, to felicitate him for the successful completion of G20, a summit that obviously India hosted for the first time, and what a fantastic show it was, right from the Bharat Mandapam to managing the reception, the hospitality, and also keeping in mind the Delhi Declaration, forming it, bringing several differing voices on one common page, something that the world is hailing India for. In the times when Ukraine and Russia crisis is ongoing, to have a US President Joe Biden on one side, and then you have Sergei Lavrov on the other, and to bring them obviously on the common page as far as this particular issue of Ukraine crisis was concerned. Masterstroke from Indian side, and obviously why not the party, the government, all coming together in order to celebrate and also acknowledge and thank the role of each and every member who put in effort, not just to draft the policy, not just to make Delhi look beautiful, but also for channelizing the energy and positivity towards a successful completion of this global event in this part of the world. Earlier we saw party president JP Nadda arriving, and a short while ago Home Minister Amit Shah had also come. One of the first arriving first dignitaries was Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, and there we see Madhya Pradesh Chief Minister also there, Shivraj Singh, and Maharashtra Deputy Chief Minister also there. Basically all BJP members, Chief Ministers and members from different states have come down to the party headquarters, and BJP obviously not failing to honor its members, pat their back, and also celebrate on this much anticipated G20 summit that has happened. This kind of gathering earlier, if I remember correctly, then was it was a time in 2022 when UP elections, BJP had swept UP and Gujarat at that time, and then this show of strength had happened at BJP headquarters in the national capital at the Shyama Prasad Mukherjee Marg, and as one of our guests was mentioning, imposing building right in the middle of New Delhi, and quite new structure that has been created, relatively new from its previous party headquarters in central Delhi. And smiles all across on the faces, and very animated discussion going on between Devendra Fadnavis and Mr. Chauhan and why not? I mean, this is a moment to celebrate. Obviously, even most of the fiercest of the critics would say that the party and the countrymen have all the good reason to celebrate this completion. And remember, this G20 was not just one-off event that the Prime Minister was attending at that time. He was, it all started from the BRICS Summit that he had gone to down south to South Africa in the African continent, came back, then he went to Jakarta for ASEAN Summit, then he returns and before that, when he returned from BRICS from South Africa, he went straight to Bengaluru to meet the scientists behind the successful launch of Chandrayaan and India's flag flying high on the surface of the moon, the dark side of the moon. So all those aspects were there. Then he went to Jakarta for the ASEAN Summit, came back and started receiving dignitaries for the G20 Summit. There we see B.S. Yediyurappa also among the top leaders who are standing right at the entrance of the BJP headquarters, and BJP supporters and cadre flanking both the sides of the entrance with their mobile cameras on to catch that moment of their beloved leader. Why not? I mean, Prime Minister Modi at this point of time with a history of managing big ticket events in a manner befitting an ease and adding much credence to India as far as hosting the events and also having a say, having a heft at these events are concerned. It's not just about hosting a particular event, it is also about making the world take notice, making the world listen to what India has to say. And this is something which is quite rare, I would say, when it comes to the international acknowledgement part as compared to years in the past. Another set of vehicles, cavalcade coming down the road. The escort cars, the pilot cars, obviously SPG governs the security aspect of Prime Minister wherever he travels, within the country, within the city or across the world. And these petrol cars, obviously pilot cars, are the first ones to make their entry. Patriotic songs being played in the background, Rang De Basanti Chola and Mere Desh Ki Dharti. Obviously the fervor, the sentiments, the emotions are quite high at the BJP headquarters, and needless to say. And now we see the leaders also coming at the foyer around the porch, and now Prime Minister Modi expected to be there at the BJP headquarters anytime soon. And as the party custom would have it, top leaders ready to welcome their leader. There we see a cavalcade approaching. And this is the cavalcade the motorcade of the Prime Minister, jammers, pilot vehicles and ambulances all in the cavalcade. And Prime Minister Modi there in his car, seated right in front, and the entry is done amid flower petals being welcoming Prime Minister, flower petals being showered at him. Obviously, the achievement there, and there we see the security first steps out, and now the Prime Minister would be alighting the car. Prime Minister Modi being greeted by BJP President J.P. Nadda in his trademark style. Prime Minister Modi greeting the masses there, obviously within the premises of the BJP headquarters. So these are the grassroots workers of the BJP, the Karyakartas, those who work industriously for any political party. The grassroots workers form the very base of the strength, the core of that party. And Prime Minister Modi leading from the front, acknowledging each and everyone's role in his trademark style, raising and waving his hand, not just at the ground, but also those who are there on the different floors of this building. There we see Prime Minister Modi waving at them, and flower petals being showered on him. And why not? Obviously, something, a work well done, needs commendation, needs appreciation. And there we have it. The Prime Minister of India, the topmost leader in the BJP, now among its own party members, and acknowledging them for the role they have played. Successful G20 Summit is what calls for these celebrations, and being a Wednesday, Prime Minister Modi taking time out of his busy schedule and meeting the party members at the BJP headquarters. And now Prime Minister Modi making his way inside the complex BJP headquarters. We saw several other leaders also heading inside now. And now Prime Minister Modi there into his chambers. The gathering obviously got what they had been waiting for, a look of their beloved leader. And now the meeting that is slated to happen at the BJP headquarters would also take place. Obviously, being the Prime Minister, while the head of the state runs the country, his commitment towards his own party members, towards his party also needs equal attention. And obviously using this gesture of being welcomed and being felicitated for the successful completion of G20, Prime Minister Modi taking time out to deliberate and to mull over future course of action as far as the party politics is concerned. And now, obviously, the proceedings inside the BJP headquarters would take place, and it is expected that this meeting of the party members, coordination committee would take place. And top leaders of the party welcoming Prime Minister Modi. Needless to say, the party has all the good reasons to celebrate, not just for the successful completion, but also making India being heard and taken note of at the global summit, something which not just India but other countries too have appreciated and acknowledged. And Prime Minister Modi's leadership and the notion of one earth, one earth, one future is something that the world went back home with the thoughts with. And G20 Summit bringing several voices together, be it the UK Prime Minister, be it US President, the African Union being included, a promise that Prime Minister Modi had made to the AU. That masterstroke, I would say, puts almost over 50 African countries directly into a connect with the developing and the developed nations, especially of the European Union and the West. And this work obviously was acknowledged by AU chairperson also, who almost broke down while meeting Prime Minister Modi and while expressing his gratitude towards India for making that pitch for G20 extension and including AU, African Union, into the G20 fold. These are the visuals from some time ago when Prime Minister Modi arrived to showering of the flower petals, and people and supporters, grassroots level workers flanking both sides of the entrance of this imposing building in the heart of New Delhi, the BJP headquarters. Prime Minister Modi not failing to acknowledge each and every one, constantly raising his hand, waving at them one by one, and making and acknowledging their presence felt.
जी
Prime Minister Modi obviously now inside the BJP headquarters. The deliberations would continue. Whether he addresses the gathering or not remains to be seen. But obviously all the members, party workers, leaders who waited anxiously for their top leader to arrive, now meeting and greeting him. The signature style of Prime Minister Modi, waving through his car, through his cavalcade. Almost the front part of the car is covered with the flower petals, sunflowers. We have seen it in the past also that Prime Minister Modi, after any political victory, any achievement, significant achievement that the country makes, has always gone back to his own members, to his people, to his party members, and has also sat down with him, something that a leader would do in order to keep even the last and the remotest worker in good faith, in good humor, in good book, so that when the time comes, he gets the strength from even the remotest areas and constituencies where BJP would be contesting election. And politics, as far as coordination goes, is something that is highly dependent on it. And BJP has many critics would even agree that it has mastered the art of harnessing the power of the grassroots level workers, the party workers, karyakartas, at the block level to the city level, then talukas, and going ahead with panchayat, and coming to the assembly seats to the Lok Sabha constituencies. This is one aspect which the BJP has constantly shown since coming into power in 2014, when Prime Minister Modi took the office for the first time, and now in his second term, the impression that the world has left India with is that of a leader of the global south, the fastest developing economy, and also a country which is utilizing its manpower to the hilt, not just in the country but also the expats, the diaspora reaching far and wide. That diaspora's role we have seen being acknowledged by Prime Minister every time he travels, be it Australia, Canada, the United States, down south in the African continent, to in any European country. He has been welcomed by the diaspora like his own, and he has also replied and reciprocated in the same manner. Taking a short commercial break, Global Lens with Neha Khanna on the other side.
Gautam Adani, one of the richest men in the world, or a business honcho, accused of manipulating the market.
अदानी जी 609 नंबर से दूसरे नंबर तक कैसे पहुंचे? सिर्फ एक सवाल पूछा, नरेंद्र मोदी जी, आपका अदानी जी से रिश्ता क्या है?
He has given the space, the railways, the airport, which he has no experience also. So the country's interest has been compromised.
Government has been very clearly supporting few industrial groups, including Adani's industrial group.
Target Adani, streaming now. ChatGPT. It can generate codes and human-like responses through text, write stories, and do a lot more.
I work in a newsroom with anchors, researchers and scriptwriters, graphic artists, producers, video editors, camera crew. But does a newsroom really need them today? All of us have to think about unique and distinctive value addition that cannot be automated or repeated or replaced by a machine.
ChatGPT may kill many companies.
A human has to be in the loop with an ability to control this.
Dark Side of the Boom. Streaming now.
मैं इमरान अहमद खान नियाजी सबके दिल से हल्फ उठाता हूँ.
When Imran Khan came initially into politics, he thought his personal popularity would be sufficient for him. It didn't happen.
The retired military generals are openly saying that Imran Khan is a better choice.
Imran Khan may have bitten a bit too much, more than what he can chew.
Implosion. This and more, streaming on world's first news OTT,